Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham here with Cody Geiler. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. I see some boxes there behind you. You got a move going on?
More boxes, mattress. Sorry for the bad background, everybody who's watching. But yeah, we're in the process of moving, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
It'll be good once we're finally in a new place. So
where are you heading, actually?
I'm actually going to be right down the street from you.
That's right. 7 houses down, exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So very close. Yeah. We'll be able to, we'll be able to keep this up a lot more and maybe do some watch parties and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Make it a lot easier for us to do some commentaries too. Right. So,
oh yeah. Yeah.
I still got people texting me and stuff about that, man. I'm telling you. So we got to get, because we were missing Solo. We haven't even done, episode 8 again because the first time it messed up, but
oh man, I forgot about that.
But episode 9 is the big one because now that a time has passed, I have mixed feelings about that. Actually, better feelings than I did initially. So anyway, we will get to all that stuff here soon as this pandemic comes to an end here. Hopefully with everything and getting us back to normal life and everybody back in the same rooms. I mean. To be honest, that's a whole another conversation, I think, because I think the way our shows have been, developed onto YouTube like this is actually an easier way to record than maybe in person. So anyway, that's a whole another thing to talk about. But I really like how we've set this up. So, all right, everybody. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. We took the week off. Cody, did you have a good Memorial weekend?
Yeah, it was good. Spend some time with family and stuff. It's kind of fun because now, my nephews are into watching The Bad Batch. So, they're like, nice. Oh, did you watch The Bad Batch? And, we talk about it a little bit. I get to spend some time with family. And, it was nice. How about you?
Yeah, same. My daughter, Sam, is big into The Bad Batch with me. So, every Friday, tomorrow morning, she's going to wake up and be like, let's watch it. She's out of school now, so it's summertime now, so I don't have to wait till she comes home from school to actually watch Bad Batch. So we'll watch that tomorrow. But we did the same. Just did some work around the house, but Memorial Day is always fun. It was a great day, so it was nice to get outside, have some family over. We had some food over, had some bunch of food. So, which this is great because you'll actually be in the neighborhood. If you got stuff, if you ain't going out of town for family, you got family right here now. So it's all good. Yeah. It's good. It's fun. All right. So everybody, thanks for coming back to us. We've got 2 episodes of The Bad Batch to talk about. Since we missed last week, a couple bit of news, War of the Bounty Hunters just dropped. We'll kind of go over that schedule a little bit. I was looking through my drawers tonight thinking, I'll probably wear this one. That's good for this. And then, thank you. And then the, little main topic that I wanted to kind of go through today was centered around a story about an interview John Boyega did that somewhat resurfaced. It's actually been, he did it a while ago, but it kind of resurfaced and it got a lot of people on the internet talking about the possibilities of a Finn return. So we'll talk about some things like that in our main topic. But first, let's go back a couple weeks, Cody. Episode 4 of The Bad Batch called Cornered. And we got the return just because she was actually introduced in The Mandalorian. But we got the return of a familiar character, Fennec Shand. What was your overall impression of this episode?
Yeah, I felt like episode 4 kind of had me a little more invested. Episode 3, I had parts of it that I liked when they dove into Crosshair, but then some of the Bad Batch sort of storyline with that crash landing, it left a little bit more to be desired on my part. But this one, I felt like it had a little bit more, it was just a little bit more action, a little bit more going on with Fennec going after Omega. And I feel like that kind of lends itself to this idea of, okay, so obviously, I mean, not obviously, but if you kind of try to think through where we had talked about, okay, what do the Kaminoans want? out of they were talking about getting one of the clones back and wanting to continue the next phase of clone troopers and cloning, and it seems more evident that Omega is, if you believe that the Kaminoans hired Fennec, which is sort of where I was led to believe with it, that, Omega is more important than the other members of the Bad Batch. So I feel like that was kind of a really interesting idea that got presented through the episode. So are you still on that idea that the Kaminoans are the ones that still hired Fennec, or are you open to thinking that there's someone else? I mean, I'm open to thinking someone else. At this point, I don't think the Empire if you think about the Empire versus the Kaminoans, I feel like the Empire doesn't know about Omega yet. That she is a clone, very much like, Clone Force 99, that she's one of the enhanced clones. So I feel like if they don't know about her, the only logical idea for me is that currently what we know as an audience, that it would be the Kaminoans, and maybe what we were speculating of, do they need one of these Bad Batch members to be able to replicate or pull more genetic material from Jango? But it makes it sound like the member they're talking about is really Omega. It's not one of the Bad Batch at all. So kind of makes you wonder, is she, more of one of these like unaltered type clones, kind of like how Boba was? Will they kind of lean into that a little bit? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I'm still on the side of the fence that I believe the Kaminoans are the ones trying to get Omega back. Because obviously, unless I guess you could argue that they were kind of in public, so she didn't want to do it in public. But I feel like she's trying to bring Omega in alive. And so I think that I think bringing Fennec in this way was actually pretty clever, because you could put any bounty hunter at that point. And in fact, this gives you an opportunity, honestly, to introduce a new bounty hunter to make everybody kind of fall in love with a new character. But I get it. Filoni, as we'll see in the next episode, Filoni is definitely trying to make his connections through this universe, right? So I think it was Fennec even wearing the same helmet, it's like she's had that thing for now 30 almost 30 years, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's a little shinier, but right? Yeah, and Ming-Na Wen, I feel like, we can't not go by this episode and not talk about, she's great in a lot of other things outside of Star Wars, but she did a great job in The Mandalorian. So it's cool to see her here, see her do the voice acting as well as the live action, get to see that crossover. And then what this could mean or lead up to for Book of Boba Fett, right? Because we're going to see more of her. What connections will she make here? There's even all kinds of speculation, and not to go too far, but like, could somebody like Omega pop up in Book of Boba Fett? Who knows?
Wow, yeah.
There's just there's a lot of room for bringing characters like this from Mandalorian now into the Bad Batch in animation, and then flesh out the character backstory a little bit. Because, I think Fennec in Mandalorian, she was supposed to be having a rendezvous with somebody related to the Empire.
Right.
So, that's the other part of this whole conversation, is I do think the Kaminoans hired her, but she will eventually at some point have connections through the Empire and her bounty hunting. So it'll be cool to see if they bring her into more episodes.
Yeah, overall, I liked, like you said, I liked the action of this episode. I think it was a well-paced episode. Unfortunately, they're getting shorter, it seems like. This was only like 20, 25 minutes maybe. But I thought it was really good. I thought, I'm a little surprised, even though I got to take a step back and really remember that this is a 16-episode season, so it is going to be drawn out a little bit, but I'm a little surprised that we're not seeing as much as Crosshair as I thought. There's not really that talk of the Empire. It's been a couple episodes now where we haven't seen him since that whole thing with Saul Guerrera's team and those innocent people on Honoron. So, I was hoping they still get more of that progression, but it seems like they're just gonna pop up and be on the squad's tail at some point here, maybe this next episode or not, I don't know. But now, I'll mention, 'cause I'm curious what your thoughts are on this real quick. I'm on our the Mandalore podcast that we do some in-depth talk. There was some comments sent into us about, and I think you're familiar with this. Have you played the Force Unleashed games, right?
Yeah.
So they mentioned, they asked us whether or not we felt like some of the storylines that came out of there, where you remember Starkiller, when you play a Starkiller, you go back to Camino and help destroy or attack the clone facility there. The Kaminoans actually have built these clones that are in order to combat the Empire, because they know that they're getting mistreated and whatnot. But in that storyline, they're still being used by the Empire. Curious your thoughts really quick on, do you think, because basically what they were asking was, do you think any of those storylines will actually be adapted into the Bad Batch? Because, what we're seeing a little bit again, I think, is the Kaminoans they're feeling the pressure that we could lose this business. And, when you suddenly take the lifestyle away from a whole society, and, that what we know about is cloning to them is like their life, that there could be some tension there. An unexpected tension that the Empire is thinking, right? Right now they're thinking, how are we going to get the whole galaxy to adhere to what we want? Well, now we may have this whole race of people that are just fed up with what we're trying to decide and fight back. So do you think possibly any of those storylines could make its way into this show?
I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I think it's always interesting. Lately, you've seen some of the creators pull from those Legends material. I mean, I feel like The Mandalorian is a great example. Jon Favreau, and then Filoni. Filoni's been doing it a lot, even in animated form. I think, it shows that even though there are Legends in canon, Star Wars still does have a little bit of maybe not as large of a breadth that some of the DC and Marvel comics have to pull from, but they do have some source material that they can adapt from. And I think it always makes it a little bit, it just makes it easier to kind of find storylines that audiences have liked or have good reception. I mean, you think about the movie coming up,
Rogue Squadron.
Rogue Squadron, the Patty Jenkins movie that they're working on. That was a book series. They made video games about it. So I think if there are storylines like that, finding ways to grab nuggets of things that people liked. I mean, the Force Unleashed games I thought were really fun when they first came out. I don't know that they're going to really lean in and have Starkiller come in. I mean, I think that seems a little bit hard. He would be such a huge pivotal character, and there would be so much backstory with him and Vader that would be hard to work into some of the current canon. But I mean, Sam Witwer, he's worked with Filoni a lot. It would be amazing if they did something like it. But even those ideas of cloning Force sensitive, right? Because Starkiller, there were a bunch of clones of Starkiller. It kind of helped make the video game make sense. Your character can kind of die and keep coming back because there's clones of them, right? Cool little way that they kind of work that in there. I think it's definitely leading towards a kind of rebellion on Camino. And I know there's been other instances of this other than just in Force Unleashed, and I believe it was Force Unleashed 2. But the idea that Vader and the 501st clones actually were the ones dispatched to go to Camino. I think that would be really interesting if they kind of pulled from some of that stuff. It'd be really cool to see how they do that. Will this be almost like a clone rebellion? If the Bad Batch and maybe Rex find other clones and you pit clones against clones. I mean, honestly, think about having Crosshair on one side and the Bad Batch. We've talked a lot about, when they square off, what that tension's going to be like, because it's not just fighting the Empire. This is like fighting against your brother.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it lead to a really emotional kind of battle like that.
That would be incredible. So one freebie I'll throw out there for Lucasfilm, they can use this if they want. But just imagine, and again, this would be hard because you're actually kind of getting away from the Bad Batch, but imagine, again, pulling from the source material, have Vader go to Camino, have them clone something, a Jedi or something and create Starkiller, right? Have that apprentice, and then you hire Sam Witwer in live action to fight Obi-Wan in his Obi-Wan series. So Obi-Wan can kill somebody, right? Because he can't kill Vader. That's why he's not there in the original trilogy. So there you go. That's how you bring Starkiller from the source material, right?
I mean, I think it's possible at this point. You just outlined a way that like you can introduce a character that still has a large impact, but that their story can be contained enough, within the series, or if they jump to another series or live action. I think it's interesting to see that you've got somebody like Filoni, who, he's got a, title change, at Lucasfilm, now being this, executive creative director, and he's working on the animation and the live action. So there could be this crossover, even though some of the live action he's working on is post Return of the Jedi. Right. We've just talked about, Fennec Shand obviously is popping up here, and I'd love to see, you talk about all the clones, Boba Fett has got to come into the Bad Batch at some point.
He does.
Because he's he's an unaltered clone, and, you got to assume that, even though he might not want to have anything to do with the clones, his story matters in this, whole idea about Camino and clones, and Camino being kind of like where he was raised. So.
And Filoni has not been able to finish his story that he was talking about with him in Clone Wars, right? So he's got to, and Cad Bane, I feel like, has got to be coming back as well, because those guys have not finished their stories in this series.
That unfinished, episode of Cad Bane.
I'm telling you, that's going to show up in this series. I would put my life on that. That's got to be in here. Okay, so let's move on to episode 5, which came out last Friday, called Rampage. Now, for me, again, surprised a little bit that we didn't get any more Crosshair Empire storyline. So this is a storyline where the guys are trying to find out who the bounty hunter is that is after Omega. And they need to get that information. But they're also learning now that information doesn't come for free. And they are tasked with basically a mercenary mission to recover a child that is captive, and ends up being what you wouldn't expect. So what did you think overall of this episode?
So let's see. This one, it was one of those ones where I felt like, you mentioned there was a lack of Crosshair, a lack of the Empire, a lack of some of the larger story, and I felt like this one they could have left a little more breadcrumbs for the overall arc. Sometimes we talk about these episodes that are like so self-contained. Like if it didn't happen, what would you miss? Right? You get to kind of the end of the episode, and they've done the job, and they're going to get paid, and they think they're going to get more information on Fennec, and it's just like, oh yeah, she's a bounty hunter, she's pretty new to bounty hunting. She was hired by, somebody in the bounty hunting guild, and it's just like, I already knew all that.
Yes.
And I get it. Some of the show, it's not always, it's designed for a larger audience. I kind of wanted more, to be honest. I know. I think this is where I'm seeing that the week to week of the Bad Batch is interesting in comparison to something like, and I know it's hard to compare it to, say Mandalorian season 2. But the conversation week to week, like in the release, seeing it week to week, I feel like the Bad Batch may have actually benefited from a larger drop of episodes or of an entire season. Whereas some of these episodes that, like this one, for me, it just felt like there wasn't a lot there. It was cool to see some of the ties to, the Rancor and Bib Fortuna popping up. Those are fun little nods. But I feel like I needed a little bit more of the breadcrumbs of, oh, this is potentially who hired Fennec, and this is where we're going in the next episode. And I felt like, if I hadn't seen this episode, I didn't miss a lot.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. I think looking back and watching it a couple times, I think the only thing I would take away from this that I think will come back is actually the character Sid that was introduced. That last conversation she had with Hunter, I think that is kind of foreshadowing that they're either going to come back to her for more information, or that she could potentially be an issue for them because she now knows who they are and probably has a connection and contact with, for them. So that's the only thing I got out of it. Like you said, if I had missed it, everybody that has seen The Mandalorian, which according to their numbers, a lot of people have seen The Mandalorian. So everybody knows who Fennec Shand is already. And there wasn't any new information that Sid got. It was to the Bad Batch, but it wasn't to the audience. So I agree with you. I think there should have been one or two nuggets that we didn't know that would have kind of made us feel like, wow, I needed to see this. So totally agree with that. I think, again, it's always nice to get tie-ins to the outside universe, seeing Bib. There's a big debate whether or not that's the same Rancor or not that is in Return of the Jedi. I did the research. It's actually not, or it could be. The Lucasfilm has not said either way. You've got Muchi, which is this Rancor's name. Patissa is the name of actually the Rancor in Return of the Jedi, which was only revealed in the book Aftermath, Life Debt. So we've seen the books get, retconned Cobb Vanth has been retconning that Aftermath series. So is it possible Muchi is the one that ends up being? Could the Rancor have a nickname? Whatever. It's either way. Lucasfilm isn't saying yet. They're just saying that there's Rancors, and this one's Muchi, this one's Patissa. And whether or not they're the same, they're not saying. So anyway, it overall probably doesn't matter, right? But beyond that, again, I think that was meant to be some kind of callback, and give you some nostalgic feelings about the original trilogy and whatnot. So, but
kind of makes you feel bad for Rancors. You're like, oh, if that is the same Rancor, you're like, oh,
gosh, I know,
Muchi,
right?
It's just
Yeah, and I read somewhere too where in one of the old encyclopedia books, which again, those get changed. Those actually get changed all the time, so you can't really rely on those too much. But except whatever the latest version is. But one of the older ones mentioned that the Rancor that was given, that you see in Return of the Jedi, was actually a birthday gift from Bib Fortuna to Jabba. So is that what's happening here? Is Bib getting Muchi and then giving Java for his birth? So it's like it's tying in a little bit, but who knows if that's the case. So I liked it. Again, I think like the Fennec Shand episode, I think it was good. But I tell you what's different. Obviously, what's happening is that it's starting. It does feel like the Clone Wars, but with the Clone Wars, we did go into the cycle of 3 or 4 episode arcs, right? You would start watching something and it wouldn't end until it was 3 episodes later or 4 episodes later. Even though this feels like the Clone Wars, it definitely feels like it's not following that pattern, right? Each one of these episodes are somewhat self-contained and moving the overall story. I think this whole season is going to be one arc, very similar to The Mandalorian, right? So I think it's kind of combining those in a sense, but which comes to the point that maybe I'm starting to feel like maybe the Bad Batch is maybe 16 episodes might be too many if you're if you're trying to tell one story in this season. 10 to 12 probably would do it, kind of like Mandalorian, because if you had more episodes like you did Clone Wars, you just have a lot more arcs, you have a lot more characters you're dealing with. Right now we're just focusing on the Bad Batch, which I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know. Do you get that feeling at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always room to, be critical, but, be, not critical just for, being negative sake, but,
Right.
even looking, I love Mandalorian season 2, but that episode where the ship crashes and you've got the kind of like, the
Space
ice
fighters.
and yeah. I think that episode you didn't need. I think you take it out and, ship crashes, fix the ship, they go somewhere else,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's always a little bit of filler. People use that word and throw it around a lot, but I think that the Clone Wars had those episodes. Even episodes that George said were some of like his favorites. They did about the droids. Like I could totally just take or leave that completely. It doesn't further the plot of the Clone Wars. Doesn't follow any of Ahsoka, Rex, Anakin, or Obi-Wan. So I think you're right. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see once we get to the 16th episode. Clone Wars season 7 had this, 12 episodes, and they really did have these three episodes. Ahsoka had her little arc, and then, they had the Bad Batch, and then, they kind of built to the ending on the Siege of Mandalore. Yeah, so it's interesting because we're not getting as much time to flesh out one singular story over 3 episodes, even though they're 20, sometimes 30 minutes. But yeah, I think more time helps you to be able to do some of that storytelling.
Yeah. No, I think in the end, yeah, like you said it perfectly. Like I'm being a little critical, but I'm not being negative whatsoever. I want as much Star Wars as I can get. I do feel like that once we get to 14, 15, 16, like I'm going to look back and probably feel like these episodes were intended to make you just get to know these characters a little bit more, right? And care about them a little bit more on what's going to happen now. Because I did read, Kevin Kiner, who's scoring this thing, just finished the other day. He scored the 16th episode. And I believe he either put a crying emoji or something. Like, it's very emotional. So I think it's going to get there. I just, like you, I think there's just times where there's episodes that maybe you don't need, or you just could condense and get some extra stuff in there that furthers the story a little bit. But either way, the bottom line is they're good episodes. They look fantastic. Yeah, I'm by far not complaining at all. It's I can't wait for the next one. So
yeah, we got one coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, you got episode 6.
When you're listening to this, yeah, we're recording on a Thursday, so. But
this will be out on Friday the same day, so I'm sure you'll go see Bad Batch before you listen to us. But
yeah, no, I think it's one thing I was just thinking about. You're talking about kind of the amount of episodes they've had and the amount of story that's progressed. I feel like now that we're on 5, or we're 5 in, I feel like I'm starting to waver on what I thought Omega's reveal or potential was going to be. I was very much in the camp that Omega was going to be a force sensitive clone,
right?
Which is still a possibility. But I feel like now that we're 5 episodes in, and she's been put in a lot of situations, that she could have, used the force or done something. I'm starting to think that that's not the case, and I don't know if like you've thought through it or changed, your feelings about it.
I didn't have any thoughts that she would be force sensitive. I'm still on the fence that I'm still on the side of, actually it's funny because I didn't really have a set opinion about, because my first thought was that she was possibly the same age as Boba Fett and an unaltered clone. But, we talked about in other podcasts that maybe her age seems actually a little younger, because Boba Fett right now would be about 13, 14. She seems like she's more like 9 or 10, not an early teenager. So she could be a little younger than Boba Fett. So I don't know. I think that she has a lot more skills than it's alluding to. So this whole perfect or next level clone, for some reason, I feel like she's even though her name is Omega, which means usually the end. I don't know. Part of me felt like she might have been the first attempt at this superior clone that they're talking about. But then they go back to that conversation with the Kaminoans, and it's like they haven't gotten there yet. So I don't know. I'm actually really, my mind's all over the place with her, to be honest. But I don't feel like the Force sensitive. I could be Homer's, like, definitely could be wrong, but I just don't feel like the Force sensitive is part of it. Part of her, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that your idea of her being this super clone, whatever you want to call it, I think she's definitely, sometimes she's even shown some of her other abilities, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, like being able to track a little bit like Hunter back in the episode where they were looking for that part of the
she
ship.
just seems smart too, you know, when she's talking about
like tech.
Yeah. And she's able to shoot a gun, you know, it's like she feel like she almost has all of their characteristics already, but they could be just leading me down that road. Who knows? You know, because I think the Force has to come into this show somehow. In a way, though, it has to. It would not be a Filoni show. Yeah, and it would not be a Filoni show if it didn't. So, all right. So, good talks there. We'll be obviously back next week, talk about episode 6 as it comes out. And I don't think I tried to look at a title. I haven't seen a title or anything yet. So they've done a hell of a job keeping these titles and descriptions hidden in secret. So no idea about that. Okay, one bit of news that came out that I wanted to kind of briefly talk about was that Lucasfilm apparently has ended development of the show Rangers of the New Republic that we were supposedly get on Disney Plus, and not only its own show, but apparently it was going to be a tie-in show to The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Book of Boba Fett. So I don't know, surprised by this at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised in some ways because, like you mentioned at the top, it being this tie-in, you know, you assume that with Mandalorian, future Mandalorian seasons, Ahsoka, and what this Rangers show would have been, that they're potentially leading to this Thrawn level threat, you know, sort of universe, shared Mando universe, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, you feel like, okay, so they had ideas, you know, they had kind of a game plan or a map, and you know, so they had ideas for how this show would be important and impactful and lead into the other shows potentially, or lead into the ending. So, you know, they've got to tell those stories and use them somehow. Now, maybe they'll fold them into other shows, other seasons. But, you know, with the Gina Carano, you know, kind of being fired and all that, it makes sense that if they would have had this show kind of being on her shoulders mostly,
right?
Now they would have to rework that completely, create a new character, get the audience invested. You know, we've had 2 seasons to get to know Cara Dune. You know, now you introduce a new character, unless they were to pull somebody like a Hera, who would be great. You know, it's hard to get that audience kind of buy-in of like, hey, here's this new show and this brand new character that we hope that you like. So I can see why they would kind of change their plans, but I wonder what this not in active development really means. You know, some of the times, you know, this game of telephone and the sort of way it gets written in an article can be related upon. So I don't know if it just means they're not working on it, or if it's being shelved, or if it's being canceled. Because I don't know if it's definitively like canceled, not happening ever.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky with these in development type shows, you know, because when we got this announcement on Investor Day last year, I mean, there was a lot of content announced. I mean, to the point where there's no way they have enough people to be working on these things simultaneously. right? So, as with anything, I mean, Rian Johnson's trilogy, of course, we had the Game of Thrones guys that were commissioned to do a Star Wars thing. These things happen. Things get announced, you dive into them, and ultimately it falls apart some way. For one, it could be creative differences. Since this was a Filoni show, I don't think that's the case, because at this point, I think Filoni can do whatever he wants, and there's nothing really Lucasfilm could do about it. But, honestly, you could say it was the Gina Carano thing, which would probably be believable for most people. But it also could be simply Filoni could have really dived into the creative aspect of it, looked at that against his other shows, and ultimately said, you know what, I just don't think this will work anymore. So they shelve it. Could have been that easy, that simple also, right? So, because as you start trying to weave 4 shows together, it's like, you know what, these characters, maybe not so interesting. I mean, how do you compare these characters to Ahsoka? I mean, everybody's going to want to see Ahsoka. Are they really going to care about these pilots or these Rangers that who knows what it was really about? I don't know. You've got Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and ultimately you're introducing Thrawn. Is anybody really going to care about some Rangers? That's a big thing to do, even if it was Cara Dune, right? Even though she had a big fan base, I feel like she had a lot of people behind her, but she also had a lot of people that didn't really care for the character. Nothing to do with Gina. A lot of people didn't like the character. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the reason. Right?
I think it's totally possible. I mean, as far as like production development, I mean, we know, sometimes you start working on a project, things fall through. Sometimes it's related to budget. You don't think that's the case here, but you wonder if, this whole idea of being, what is being greenlit, right? They announced it. So you assume at some point, they had talks and they thought this was a good enough idea. But, sometimes in other, platforms and, HBO will shoot whole pilots, then the series won't ever get aired.
Right.
It happens because sometimes it doesn't work out, or, they get, even get to the point of shooting and having the edit, and they're just like, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore. It's not either not up to what they wanted or not up to the standards of the brand. So, it happens. Unfortunately, it's part of the process and development, and it could be as simple as, like you said, they started working on scripts. I mean, maybe Filoni's been writing scripts for Ahsoka, maybe it's leading into different directions. You assume that they are shooting Mando season 3.
They are.
It's kind of unclear on when Book of Boba Fett production ended and Mando season 3 started, because it seemed like they may have gotten meshed together, and but who knows? Yeah.
So that one right now, one of them finally bites the dust of that whole list of shows. And again, don't be surprised if some other ones don't actually happen that we listed. I mean, there's ones that got announced that we still haven't heard a peep about. I mean, there was a Lando series announced. We haven't heard anything about that. Acolyte was announced. Nothing about that so far, besides who's heading that. We know who's leading that charge. But Lando, nothing. We don't even know who's doing anything on that. Really, I think they announced the director or showrunner. I can't remember, but
I believe they had a showrunner, and I'm forgetting his name. But they didn't even ever announce the stars.
Exactly.
I think Billy D. Williams maybe made a comment somewhere that he's probably involved, but then you have to assume that Donald Glover is Lando,
the main guy
in it.
Yeah.
But they never said anything about it. So it's like, I mean,
like
you're saying, I mean, if Donald Glover just says no, that show ain't happening.
That's exactly right.
Unless they recast. So
yeah, because I did see a rumor that, not maybe a rumor, but I did see a bit of news that Bob Chapek, who is the new CEO of Disney, kind of let it slip that there was a Han Solo series. Did you see that at all? I guess
I saw it, and I did. I don't know.
But then he retracted and said, "No, I meant Boba Fett." But
Yeah,
So did he slip
it's
up, or
interesting.
did he just make a true mistake?
It's like, does Bob not really know his Star Wars characters?
Yeah, yeah,
Or did he let something slip? I
yeah.
think it's really hard to. That one's so hard because it's like if it was Kathleen Kennedy, you'd be like, "Oh, there's a Han Solo series."
Yes,
Book it,
true.
it's happening. But because it's him, you're like, okay, he's just had the position that he's filling in from Iger. He may not know Star Wars quite as well.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily even as like, some people see Iger as a lot more into the content side, whereas Chapek might be a little bit more of the business side.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, if it was anybody else, I would read into it more, but I kind of just think he maybe didn't know who he was talking about.
Right. I think that's probably more the case. Now, again, I just mentioning what we just talked about. I wouldn't be surprised if they, obviously do sign Donald Glover and they do a Lando series, that they bring Han into that series somehow, right? I mean, that's very much a possibility. So, he could be, maybe he heard that and it was like totally mistaken, but totally agree. I think he just misspoke. So,
I would love it if he let it slip. I would love it if they're doing
that's true too. Yeah, that is true. Okay, before we get into our main topic here, again, some buzz on the internet the last couple of days has really been about this comic crossover series that just got. It was announced, and there was a lot of issues that were prelude issues to the number one issue that came out this past week, which was the War of the Bounty Hunters. Massive crossover with all the current books that are out there: Star Wars, Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, and Bounty Hunters. So you have your series, which we're going to talk about real quick, the schedule, but this thing is getting a lot of buzz. Charles Soule is the main writer of the War of the Bounty Hunters. And he's fantastic. And I read what was called the Alpha issue of War of the Bounty Hunters, which is just the one before number one. You read number one. We're not going to get into the story right now because we're going to get on the same page about it first. But I feel like there's a lot going on in this series, and I feel like the hype is definitely a true hype for this comic series. You get that sense?
Yeah, I mean, without giving anything away, I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, Charles Soule is writing it. I like his writing. I think this first issue is really interesting. It's good. It kind of, even for what they set up with the story of this idea of, Boba Fett with Han Solo and Carbonite, and kind of, this idea that he didn't just have an easy ride, from Cloud City straight to Jabba's palace. At first, just seems like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think that happened, but it'll be interesting to see what other people think, because it definitely takes it in a direction I didn't think it was going. So I was very surprised by a reveal that happened in it, and be interested to talk about it once others have been able to.
Yeah. And I feel like, the thing about these big crossovers, though, it's very easy to get intimidated that, okay, well, gosh, I haven't read any of these other series. Am I going to be totally lost? And, this is the first massive one that they've done with Star Wars with the new canon. They've done crossovers before, like Vader and Star Wars has crossed over. Vader and Aphra have crossed over, but to do it across the entire line has not been done yet since Marvel got the series back, the Star Wars license back. But they have done something like this, obviously, in Marvel and DC. And I was reading a lot of DC comics for a while there, and if it's done right, the main storyline that you're following, which is the War of the Bounty Hunter series, which is 5 issues. I mean, if you just dive into that, you'll probably get the whole main story. These tie-ins or these, one shots that are coming out, they're good additional pieces to the story, but not the main puzzle pieces, right? So don't feel intimidated. I think if you just read War of the Bounty Hunters, I think you'd kind of get a really sense of what's happening. But I'm gonna read them all, so I can come back and make that determination when we do that. But just to give everybody a quick sense of the layout. Now, this again is stretched out. This is stretching out over 6 months. It started actually in May. You've got, like I mentioned, War of the Bounty Hunters Alpha, which picks up literally right after Episode 5, and Han has been frozen in carbonite, and Boba Fett starts his journey to deliver him to Jabba. So you have prelude issues from Star Wars 13, Bounty Hunters 12, Vader 12, and Dr. Aphra 10. So those are all in May. Now, June, which just happened this past week, really kicks off the series, War of the Bounty Hunters #1. Then, of course, you have all your tie-in issues every month, Star Wars, Vader, Aphra, and Bounty Hunters. So July, War #2. But July does introduce, we were talking off mic, there's a couple one-shots I can introduce. So Jabba the Hutt #1 comes in. That's another kind of one-shot tie-in. August, you have Forlom and Zuckuss. There's a one-shot tie-in there. September is Bausch. And then October is IG-88. So you have some extra bounty hunters, which probably is them, getting involved in the whole war with Boba Fett and stuff like that. So I don't know. This is a really ambitious series. But I love, like you said, though, I love it because it is filling in those gaps in the movies. And I'm telling you, I feel like after this whole series is done and reading all of this, it just changes your perception of Return of the Jedi, knowing what Boba Fett went through to get, I guess, honestly, we don't know right now. I guess he's the one that still delivered Han there. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah, I feel like at this point, it kind of reshapes, like you said, how you look at some of these scenes and these in between movies. But even look at Boba Fett, a character who didn't have a lot of material in the original trilogy. Now we've been able to dive into him a lot. He's been in some of these comics. He's been in, obviously he's been in Mando season 2. He's been in Clone Wars. You look back to when he was younger and everything. So I feel like this comic, especially being like this War of the Bounty Hunters, will start to maybe even set up and shape, maybe even give you like some ideas of where they could take Book of Boba Fett. So I feel like if anybody is really interested in Book of Boba Fett, and while you're waiting for that in December, this could be a really interesting way, to get inside the mind of Boba Fett, but maybe get to know what this bounty hunting underworld type landscape is going to be like, and what it could look like as Boba Fett returns to that. Because we don't know how long, when we saw him in Mando season 2, was he just there on Tatooine hiding out with the Tusken Raiders? We don't know.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see if they pick up any of these characters and storylines and bring it over to Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So anyway, that is out there. We'll keep everybody apprised of that as it goes. All right. So our main discussion does center around another news story that kind of resurfaced in a way. It was an interview that John Boyega did a few months ago. But people are, for some reason, just now talking about it. It wasn't really massively released back then, but parts of that interview got released out into the public this within the last couple of weeks. And to sum it all up, basically, in the end, he basically mentions in there that he is open to returning as Finn as long as J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy are involved in the project. So that just got me thinking, and I wanted Cody to kind of weigh on it. What stories would we want to see Finn in? Because basically it's thinking the questions that I would have. What stories would I like to see him in? Does it have to involve Poe? Does it have to involve Rey? Can we see an isolated Finn story? Could Finn have his own series? we know he's force sensitive. Does it go that route, or does it go a different route? I was just trying to think of what could we see Finn do in a movie or a series of movies or a TV series or a Disney Plus series or whatever, that would be interesting and worthy of telling for that character. So I don't know. I guess first off, Cody, is this a do you actually see John Boyega coming back, and or do you think Lucasfilm would actually try to get this done?
I do think Lucasfilm would. The when is a whole nother question, and obviously, nobody knows, uncertain as of now. Because you think about Rey's story as well, and how this could tie in. You feel like they're going to revisit it, and I think Daisy Ridley, even more recently than this article about John Boyega, has expressed interest in coming back. So I think there's a possibility that they revisit, the post-9 characters. When I think about Finn specifically, I do think a Disney Plus series would be more interesting if they did a story that wasn't encompassing of Rey and Poe and sort of all of the characters. But I feel like I remember John Boyega saying this line where he said something like, "You're not going to Disney Plus me," in an interview. I'd have to go dig it up because it's been a while since I've seen it, and I feel like he probably regrets saying it. But at the time, Disney Plus wasn't out yet,
right?
And so I feel like it was this idea of like, I'm in the movies.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go to Disney Plus, because I think somebody asked him as much, like after 9, like, could we see you in a Disney Plus thing? So I don't know if he would do that for whatever reason. I don't know if he's just wants to be a film actor only. But I definitely think Lucasfilm is going to bring back those characters. Yeah, I mean, I think they will eventually.
Yeah, I'm torn. I'm still torn because, and I know they've already done this once, so doing it again wouldn't probably be, something they wouldn't do. Meaning that I remember when the Blu-rays of episodes 1 through 6 came out, and I have it somewhere on my shelf, right? The one that has young Anakin on the cover, right? You probably have that too, right? Do you remember what that said? The complete saga. I mean, it says the complete saga on it. We know now we have 7, 8, 9, right? And now that is the Skywalker saga, right? So could they bring Rey back and extend that story? Because if she comes back, it's got to be episode 10, right? 10, 11, 12, right? I just It's got to be. So you're then extending the Skywalker story, the Skywalker saga. Again, can they do it? Absolutely. They've already done it already before, back when Lucas deemed it the complete saga 1 through 6. Because at that time it was Anakin's story, right?
Yeah.
Now it's the Skywalker story. So I get it. It can keep growing. That's fine. So that's the only issue I would have with bringing Rey back. Now, bringing Finn back is a whole nother thing. And I think you could do that. You could do a Finn movie. And how awesome would it be? Now, if I'm thinking what story would I see him in, I want a full-fledged Jedi version of Finn. That's what I want. I don't want the guy that's just going around trying to figure it out anymore. I want the guy that has already been through the training. Because he's already older, right? So he doesn't sound like I guess there's still trials, I guess, but who knows how Rey is going to develop her Jedi Academy, right? So Finn is, let's just jump 10, 15 years ahead. The Jedi Order is there. He's a full-fledged Jedi. And I'd love to see him being the Jedi Knight with an apprentice. And let's see him develop an apprentice and go out and find some mission that, he's out there in the galaxy solving. Doesn't have to come across Rey. Can keep Rey at the temple. She's still the Grand Master, and she's basically the Yoda of the new Jedi Order. And the new Jedi Order, that's what it should be, right? Just like the book series, right?
Yeah, totally.
So that's what if I was in Lucasfilm pitching a storyline, that's what I would say. And like you just said, there's probably, I haven't read the new Jedi Order series, but there's a ton of source material right there, because that was a massive book series. There's something in there, I'm sure. Hell, bring in the Yuuzhan Vong at some, have him discover them. I don't know. But let's get Finn out there. Let's get him in Jedi robes, get him in his own lightsaber, and let's see a Jedi Finn adventure. I'd be 100% by it. And I have a feeling John Boyega yielding it, throwing around a lightsaber would be something to bring him back.
Oh, yeah. I think if they pitched him, hey, we're going to do a series or a movie with you, and it's not going to be all the other cast, but you're going to get to be a Jedi, I think he would do it, because I think he enjoyed that process. I think so you said that in the article, I feel like I'm remembering, he said that he would do it if JJ and Kathy were back on.
We're involved. We're involved.
Kathy would always be involved in
correct.
Some way. So
basically, JJ would have to come back and either produce it or direct it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to dive into that completely. I think it's less likely that happens. Maybe if he produces it, maybe they could sort of do that because he helped create the characters. They could kind of just give him producer credit, and he's not, because I don't think that they would actually bring JJ back as a director, mostly because I just don't know if they would want all the discourse that all the sequels had, the back and forth, the Ryan JJ whole thing. I don't think they want to dive into that again with a brand new chapter. But all that being said, I love your idea. I think he should totally be a Jedi. I think the source material they should pull from is we've got a great character that's very much like him. His name's Kyle Katarn.
Oh,
Let Finn be the new Kyle Katarn. He is an ex-Imperial, Force sensitive, doesn't have a lot of training, but he's strong with the Force. So he's kind of got this, it's almost like, I think when they made Kyle Katarn, it's like this blend of Han Solo and Luke. I really think that's what they kind of did, ex-Imperial, Jedi, and they just kind of meshed those characters together, but he became really interesting in a lot of the video game, Jedi Outcast, and then in the Jedi Academy game, he was a part of Luke's academy that he was making. So now if you sort of shift that over to Rey, like you said, maybe this is something... I almost want to go, what if Finn has had a little bit of training, maybe a couple years, 5 years or something like that, but like they always do, subvert it a little bit. Maybe the training hasn't been going amazingly. Maybe Rey isn't the best teacher. She's young. She's not as wise as Yoda. And we even saw with Luke, even as old and wiser he got, it wasn't always easy to be the master. So maybe if they want to subvert it a little bit, it gives Finn a reason to kind of go out on his own. Hey, I've got to kind of go, figure some things out, or go out on a mission of sorts, something that pulls him away from, Rey or the other characters. I think it would be kind of cool to see him take on a role like Kyle Katarn had, where he still maybe struggles with a little bit of his background, the fact that he was an Imperial, the fact that he was involved, with something that he so strongly disagrees with, and maybe he struggles with the dark side a little bit.
I'd say another thing that I would maybe incorporate also, again, going to the source material, because I love that Kyle Katarn aspect. With what we saw with Anakin, right, and hiding his love for Padme and their marriage, maybe that becomes something that the Jedi Order learns from, and maybe they allow Jedi to have relationships. This would be a good opportunity to actually bring in a Mara Jade that Finn has. Maybe there's two Jedi that have a relationship, and maybe it's Mara Jade, maybe it's Finn, and maybe that causes the conflicts of maybe somehow something happens to her, he has to go save her, or something happens to him, and they're both kind of thrown into this situation, with a dark side or something like that. I don't know if you can bring the Sith back necessarily, but I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for sure. But because I think it's inevitable. I think Mara Jade is going to come in some way. But this would be a good way to give him that love interest of the movie, and again, show what has evolved with the Jedi, and that this isn't the same Jedi Order that somewhat fell apart. That we're embracing compassion and love right now, and Jedi's just got to learn to make it work, which I don't think is out of the question of reality. I mean, everybody makes it work at some point, right? No matter what you do. So yeah, I think that would be a pretty interesting take.
I like that. I feel like Mara Jade sort of repurposed in a different timeline would be really cool. And I feel like Finn would be the kind of character, however you did it, or, if he had some sort of, love interest with another Jedi. He's the kind of character that I felt like in the sequels that a lot of his emotions were kind of on his sleeves,
Mm-hmm.
He really felt deeply and strongly the emotions that he was feeling. And in some ways he was kind of like this version of the audience experiencing a lot of it because he was so invested emotionally, where he's a lot different than, say like a Luke or somebody that was, maybe sometimes a little bit more stoic. You see Luke in like Return of the Jedi, he wasn't the same Luke that we saw in episode 4. So I think it would be kind of cool to see him take on a role like that because of the way they've already portrayed him.
Yeah.
And even like the way he felt for, Rey and the other characters, I think, I don't think they really dived into this a lot, but they set up their relationship and their bond being so close. I feel like his connection with Rey might be why he was able to sense, where and when she was like in trouble and things like that. You see it with Luke and Leia having that brother-sister bond. I think maybe sometimes that bond or love, whether or not it's romantic or not, might also be exemplified by the Force in some way.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so if I know this might be a little tough, but if it wasn't JJ, I mean, who would you like to see possibly helm this kind of movie? I would. My first thought, to be honest, because there were some articles with him talking about the I think it's the Trevorrow movie that was episode 9. I think Finn really apparently liked that script, is what the rumor is, that and Finn had a much bigger role in the rebellion, against this First Order. There was a part where he was supposed to lead a whole group on Coruscant. So I feel like if they brought Colin Trevorrow back to maybe do that, I think Finn would possibly be on board with that. Because I'm intrigued by that movie. Like what I've read about that script, like I'm very interested in how that would have turned out. Now the other ones, of course, I would be, and I think they eventually need to do a Star Wars movie. I think the Russo brothers needs to do a Star Wars movie. So I think they would make a killer Finn movie.
Yeah, Russo brothers, that would be really cool if they do a Star Wars movie. I'd be totally down. And I feel like they've been able to take pre-existing characters and really build on them. What they did in Marvel, what they did with Captain America. They didn't make the first Captain America movie, but they really were able to help grow that character through their writing and through their directing. So I'd be totally down for that. I'm definitely intrigued by the Trevorrow script. And I feel like there was a concept art that maybe came out or just got spread around, and it was Finn with it was like a rebel flag, that was resistance, but I think it was like a rebel symbol flag. And he was like almost like leading was it a rebellion of like stormtroopers or something? Or was it just the rebels?
I think it was just a bunch of rebels and soldiers and stuff on Coruscant. Yeah.
Okay, because I can't remember if it was stuff that I was reading or just speculation of like where they could have taken Finn's story, because
it's concept art for Trevorrow's movie.
Yeah, he got to meet the other ex stormtroopers in the actual episode 9 movie. So I feel like that idea of like this, he feels for these people that the Empire kind of took in and and I guess the First Order technically, but Empire First Order sort of took in and kind of distorted their maybe outlook on life. So you could see him maybe doing something like that, where it could be very similar to what we see in this Mando timeline, but First Order remnants, kind of still around, and maybe he has to help dispatch them, or figure out how to maybe even like reach out to some of them and save them. Realize, hey, these are people. I was one of these people, and I believed it, but ultimately he didn't really fully believe it, and that's why he left. So it'd be kind of cool to see something like that. I don't know who I would want to either write or direct it, though. I mean, I think it's it's one of those things where you just wonder what the type of story is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it'd be really interesting to see something that was like akin to, maybe more like sort of samurai vibes. So if they got somebody like I don't think he would do it. I think at one point he was set to do the Boba Fett movie, but like a James Mangold.
Yeah.
He did a really good job with the Wolverine movie. So I don't know. It'd be cool to see something like that. But that's like a very different vibe than maybe what we've been talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's good though.
So this is random, but I saw this I think this was the past week. I didn't know that Michael B. Jordan actually auditioned for Finn.
I did not know that.
Just came out recently, and I had no idea, and I totally forgot to like text and mention it to you. But
wow,
he said something about like it was one of the interviews he did, and he totally bombed the interview or the audition. And I just think about like what a different movie it would have been with Michael B. Jordan. He's so recognizable. John Boyega was more in the beginning of his career when he got into it, but I know Michael B. Jordan now is getting into directing. Obviously, he's doing all the Creed movies. He's directing this most recent Creed movie. So, part of my mind is like, wouldn't it be cool to have somebody like Michael B. Jordan, direct John Boyega in a movie about Finn? Just a weird connection there, but yeah, I don't know.
Man, Michael B. Jordan would have. Yeah, I mean, back in that must have been he must have been casting him in 2013, right? 2013, 2014. Probably, yeah. So, I don't know if Michael B. Jordan was all that popular. I know he was coming off of. I had seen him in his first gig, which was Friday Night Lights, the TV show.
Yeah,
because he hadn't done Creed yet. I don't know what he would have done before. He might have been just as early as Boyega, really. I mean, even
I guess it. Well, I mean, Friday Night Lights was a bit ago, but maybe not as recognizable to mainstream audiences. And it was TV. I think he was also in Parenthood, another TV show. I think it was NBC, but yeah. I mean, I feel like now maybe he is.
Well, he did that. He did that Fantastic Four, that horrible Fantastic Four movie.
That's true. That might have been around the same time.
It might have been.
It might have come out right before Force Awakens, but yeah, that didn't pan out as well for him, unfortunately.
Yeah. But he's been knocking it out of the park recently with, of course, Black Panther and the Creed movies.
That's honestly, Ryan Coogler is a director that I didn't think about, but when you're mentioning people that could do this one, I think it'd be really cool to see Ryan Coogler. He's already in the Disney family.
That's right.
And to take on a character like Finn with John Boyega, have a black filmmaker, a black actor. I feel like they could really dive into his character and, maybe give him sort of a little bit more to do, because I think that was one of John Boyega's criticisms of some of the sequels, is that they knew what to do with the other characters, but maybe didn't know where Finn was going.
Yes.
So by the end, when we found out that he was kind of force sensitive, that maybe it was like an afterthought. So it'd be interesting to see if any filmmaker could just dive into him a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. So we'll kind of archive our ideas there, see if any of those get used by Lucasfilm, because I know they're listening. So we'll see. But lots of I think there's a lot of opportunity there with him. So hopefully that comes to fruition. I'm a big JJ fan, so if he came back, I'd be all for it. I think if he had an isolated story to worry about with just Finn, I think he'd make a hell of a movie with him too. So, yeah, we'll keep monitoring that and see if that comes. If it never does, hey, at least it was fun talking about it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. That will do it for us this week on Inside the Force. Go out there and watch episode 6 of The Bad Batch. We've only got 11 episodes out left, including the one, episode 6 here. So that will extend out there. We will be back next week, and then we'll probably be off a week because I will be in Disney the following week, hanging out at Galaxy's Edge and, doing all those things. So
visiting Batu,
drinking some blue milk, eating some Ronto wraps, stuff like that. So
come back with a full report.
I cannot wait till any of you guys get to go down there and see this place.
Man, I'm so looking forward to it. And, I think, Disney is this kind of place that feels like, family kind of environment too. So I'm looking forward to being able to bring my son.
Yes.
I think it'll be really fun. Obviously he's pretty young right now. He's not even 2 yet, but as he gets a little older, I think it'll be really, really exciting to get to do that. So, well,
my kids were 5 and 1 when I took them. So they both have fallen in love with Disney. So obviously, because we've been going every year since. So it's fun. And of course it makes it easier because the wife is a Disney planner now. So we do get some discounts, which is nice. So, but yeah, we're going for the first time in June. We'll see. It's going to be balls to the walls hot and sweaty, but we're just going to carry those like wet sprayers, fan with the water,
little portable fans.
Yes. Yeah. And just get cooled off or whatever. So anyway, yeah, we'll be back after that. But I got some trying some new stuff there, and of course, hopefully Disney's opening up a little bit more each day. In fact, I heard Orlando. I just heard Universal just lifted all mask restrictions. I think Disney is going to be following suit here very shortly, maybe even before we get there. So, things are opening back up. Things are getting back to normal, hopefully here soon. So, hope everybody's staying safe still out there, though, and hope everybody enjoys all this Star Wars content that's coming and all that's out there. So, of course, go to youtube.com and get this show as well as all our other shows, Council Sessions, Beyond the Saga, Masters of the Order, and all the stuff that's coming soon. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. Have a great rest of your weekend and into next week. We'll be back next week. Thanks, Cody, as always, for joining me.
Of course. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Have a great week. May the Force be with you.